There was a time Elias couldn't breathe without anxiety punching his chest. Every morning, the alarm would scream into his half-slept world. His heart? Already racing. His inbox? Already overflowing. His thoughts? Loud, tangled, sharp. Elias was just 29, a financial analyst in London, working in one of those cold glass towers that never sleep. On the outside, he had everything: a job that paid well, a sharp suit, a beautiful girlfriend named Maya. But inside? He was crumbling. Quietly. Every success felt empty. Every weekend was just recovery. And every time he looked in the mirror, he saw a man pretending to be strong, when in truth, he felt breakable. Then came the moment that changed everything. It wasn't dramatic, not some Hollywood-style breakdown. It was quiet. Subtle. A rainy Tuesday afternoon. Elias ducked into a small second-hand bookstore during his lunch break, just to escape the storm. And there, tucked between dusty philosophy paperbacks, was a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He didn't know why he picked it up. He barely knew who Marcus was. But something in the worn cover whispered to him. He opened to a random page. One sentence hit him like a punch to the soul: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That line haunted him for days. And that's where the story begins, not with strength, but with a man so lost in the noise of life, that a single sentence shook him awake. This is the story of Elias, and the 7 Stoic habits that transformed him from anxious and reactive, to mentally unbreakable. Each habit wasn't just a practice, it was a turning point. A step away from weakness, and towards something unshakable. Not in the loud, aggressive way the world sells toughness. But in the quiet, resilient way Stoicism teaches us to own our mind, before the world does. Because when Elias embraced these 7 habits, he didn't just learn to survive. He learned to master himself. And now, you will too. Before Stoicism, Elias was just another man trying not to drown. He lived in a 1-bedroom flat near Canary Wharf, the kind of place with tall windows but no sunlight. Every morning began the same: coffee, suit, stress. Then a 40-minute tube ride where his thoughts raced faster than the train. He had worked his way up from intern to analyst in 4 years. Everyone called him the machine. Always on time. Always responsive. Always saying yes. But inside? He was exhausted. His girlfriend Maya noticed the change first. She'd reach for him after work, and he'd flinch. Not because he didn't love her, but because his nerves were already frayed. Conversations turned into silences. Silences turned into distance. "Elias," she once said, "you're not here. Even when you are." He didn't know how to explain it. The pressure. The constant buzzing in his chest. The fear that if he let go, even for a second, everything would fall apart. And then there was Ray, his best friend from university. Ray had taken a different path. He left the corporate grind after 2 years, became a freelance designer, and moved to the coast. Everyone thought he was crazy. Elias secretly envied him. Ray would check in from time to time: "Mate, you don't sound well. You need a break." "I don't need a break," Elias replied once. "I need to not be weak." He didn't even believe those words. But saying them felt easier than admitting the truth. Because the truth was, Elias felt hollow. He had everything he thought he wanted, but none of it gave him peace. His relationship was slipping. His health was suffering. His sense of self was fading. And yet, he kept pushing. Kept grinding. Until the cracks became too loud to ignore. That's when he found that book, Meditations. And something inside him shifted. What if strength didn't come from pushing harder? What if real strength came from slowing down, facing your mind, and mastering it? What if he didn't have to be a machine anymore? That question, fragile but powerful, became the spark. And Elias, once just another overworked man in a sharp suit, began his quiet rebellion. Not against the world, but against the chaos inside. Elias wasn't after success anymore. He'd already climbed that ladder, and found it leaning against the wrong wall. What he truly wanted was silence. Stillness. Not the absence of sound, but the kind of quiet that comes when your thoughts stop attacking you. The kind of peace that isn't dependent on what happens in the office or who texts you back. He wanted control, not over the world, but over himself. Because every time Elias cracked under pressure, every time he snapped at Maya or ghosted Ray or drank too much to numb the panic, he hated the man he saw in the mirror. And that self-disgust, became the fuel. He didn't want to be high-performing. He wanted to be mentally unbreakable. But here's the part no one sees: Elias didn't start this journey from strength. He started from rock bottom. And his goal wasn't just peace, it was reclaiming his identity. He had built a life trying to be who everyone else expected: the reliable analyst, the polished boyfriend, the dependable son. But he had no idea who he actually was underneath the roles. That's when he made a quiet vow to himself: I'm done performing. I'm done reacting. I'm done pretending to be strong while falling apart inside. From now on, I choose what kind of man I'll be. One habit at a time. It wasn't dramatic. There was no music swell. Just a quiet moment, alone at his desk, eyes red from another panic spiral. That night, he opened Meditations again and read another line that burned into his chest: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That's when Elias wrote his first real objective in his journal. One sentence: I will become mentally unbreakable, and I will do it with discipline, not desperation. That goal became his compass. He didn't know exactly how to get there yet, but he had his direction. And he was willing to lose comfort, approval, even relationships, if it meant finally becoming the kind of man who could walk through storms with a steady heart. No more masks. No more excuses. Just the quiet, steady process of becoming. The moment Elias decided to change, the world pushed back. Hard. At first, it was small things. He stopped checking his phone first thing in the morning, and his boss noticed delays in replies. He paused before reacting in meetings, and colleagues mistook it for uncertainty. He started asking deeper questions about purpose, and his team joked that he'd joined a cult of calm. But the real storm came 2 weeks after his vow. Elias was promoted. Senior analyst. More money, more meetings, more responsibility. On paper, it looked like a win. In reality, it felt like a trap. The late nights doubled. The emails never stopped. And Maya? She was tired of being put second, again. You said you were changing, she whispered one night, tears held back. But it's the same story. Just a bigger title. He wanted to argue. To say that he was changing, slowly, painfully, from the inside out. But all he could do was look at the ground. Because she was right. That promotion had tested his resolve. His Stoic journaling slipped. His reflections became rushed. He was drifting again. But this time, something had changed. Elias could feel the tension, the war between his old self and the man he was trying to become. One night, after another 12-hour shift, he stood in front of the mirror. His tie was perfect. His posture strong. But his eyes looked empty again. That's when he whispered to his reflection, "This isn't what strength looks like." And that moment? That's when the conflict sharpened. It wasn't just about balancing work and life. It was about choosing between approval and authenticity. Between chasing the next success, or building inner stillness. Between who the world wanted Elias to be, and who he was finally becoming. And that tension, that inner war, didn't come with easy answers. Because becoming mentally unbreakable isn't about escaping pressure. It's about learning how to stand in it, without falling apart. And for Elias, the test had just begun. Growth rarely comes without pain, and Elias was about to feel every inch of it. He had reached habit 3, voluntary discomfort, one of the most misunderstood Stoic practices. The idea? To choose discomfort regularly, so that when life throws chaos at you, your mind stays steady. So Elias began testing himself. He took cold showers every morning. He walked to work in the rain without an umbrella. And most symbolically, he started sleeping on the floor. A thin yoga mat. No pillow. Why? Because comfort had made him soft. It had chained his mind to convenience. And Elias wanted to break free. But those around him didn't get it. When Maya came over and saw the setup, no bed, no blankets, just Elias quietly journaling on the floor, her confusion quickly turned to anger. "What is this? What are you doing to yourself?" "I'm training my mind," he said, voice calm. "No," she snapped, "you're spiraling. This isn't healthy, it's self-punishment." Elias tried to explain. The Stoics. The practice. The long-term goal. But all Maya saw was distance. Isolation. A man she could no longer understand. She gave him an ultimatum that night: "It's me, or this phase you're going through." He didn't respond. Because deep down, he didn't know the answer yet. A week later, his parents visited unexpectedly. His mother gasped when she saw the mattress rolled up. "Beta, what happened? Are you in trouble? Are you broke?" "No, Amma. I'm just trying to change." But to them, discomfort meant failure. And Elias? He was failing to meet their expectations of stability. Even Ray, usually supportive, questioned him, "You sure this isn't just burnout in disguise, man?" Elias didn't blame them. To most people, choosing discomfort sounds insane. But to him, it was the clearest he'd ever been. Still, the weight of misunderstanding pressed heavy on his chest. He was shedding layers of his old self. But those layers had names: Maya, his parents, even parts of Ray. And now, with every step forward, he risked losing them. That was the obstacle, not just the pain of change, but the loneliness of it. Because when you walk the Stoic path, it often feels like walking alone. But Elias wasn't turning back. He couldn't. Not now. Elias once believed change came through big decisions. But as the days passed, he realized something deeper. It was the tiny habits, done consistently, that forged his new identity. Each Stoic habit wasn't just a tool. It was a battle. A decision. A mirror. And Elias faced them one by one. Habit 1, Morning Reflection. Before the sun rose, before the emails, before the world had a chance to shape his mood, Elias sat at his desk with a notebook. Just 5 minutes. He'd write, "What kind of man will I be today? What challenges might come? How will I respond?" This habit rewired his mornings. No more reacting. No more autopilot. Just intention, pure and calm. Habit 2, The View from Above. When stress closed in, Elias practiced detachment. He'd step outside during lunch, look at the city skyline, and remind himself, "I am a tiny dot on a spinning rock. This pressure is an illusion." Zooming out gave him clarity. That fight with Maya? Temporary. That rude email? Dust. He stopped sweating the noise. He started seeing the bigger picture. Habit 3, voluntary discomfort. You've seen this one already. Sleeping on the floor, cold showers. But here's what changed. Elias began to feel stronger. Not just in body, in spirit. When the train was late, when the coffee machine broke, when plans fell apart, he didn't flinch. He had trained his mind to expect less, and appreciate more. Habit 4, negative visualization. At first, this one scared him. He'd close his eyes and imagine losing his job, his health, even Maya. It sounded dark. But it created gratitude. Instead of expecting permanence, Elias prepared for loss. And strangely, it made him love more deeply. With presence. Habit 5, control dichotomy. This was the turning point. Elias drew a line in his journal. On one side, things he could control, effort, attitude, honesty. On the other, everything else, gossip, results, other people's emotions. Every time anxiety rose, he'd whisper, "Is this within my control?" If no, he let it go. If yes, he took action. This habit gave him power. Not over life. Over himself. Habit 6, purpose over pleasure. He quit chasing dopamine. No more endless scrolling. No sugar binges. No meaningless weekend parties. Instead, he asked, "Does this serve my mission?" He began running. Reading. Writing. Long walks alone. And the loneliness? It began to feel holy. Habit 7, evening journaling. Every night, before bed, Elias returned to the page. What did I do well today? Where did I react instead of respond? How can I be better tomorrow? It wasn't therapy. It was truth-telling. And slowly, through these 7 habits, Elias built something no one could see. But everyone around him began to feel. He spoke softer, but with more weight. He smiled less, but meant it more. He didn't try to control the world anymore. Because he had finally learned how to control himself. And for the first time in his life, Elias felt unshakable. The true test of a Stoic life doesn't come in peace. It comes in chaos. And for Elias, chaos came on a cold Monday morning. He was 2 months into his promotion, leading a small team on a major client account. Everything had been smooth, until the numbers didn't match. A spreadsheet error. A missing file. A financial discrepancy in the report. And the worst part? It wasn't his fault. One of his junior analysts had made the mistake, a careless one, but fixable. Still, the client was furious. Legal teams got involved. The firm was embarrassed. Within hours, an emergency meeting was called. Everyone was panicking. Fingers were pointing. His manager's voice was sharp and cold. "Elias, this happened under your leadership. Do you understand the implications?" The old Elias would have cracked. Defended. Panicked. Blamed. But not this version. Elias took a breath, long and deliberate. He remembered habit 5, control dichotomy. He couldn't control the mistake. But he could control how he responded. He stood up in that glass-walled room, surrounded by tension. "Yes. I take full responsibility," he said calmly. Silence. His manager blinked. The legal rep raised a brow. "We'll investigate," someone muttered. "We'll see what happens next." The room emptied slowly. Eyes followed Elias out. No one said a word. But Ray, who had joined the firm a month ago on a freelance project, caught up to him later. "You didn't even mention the guy who made the error." "It wasn't the moment," Elias replied. "And blaming won't fix anything." Ray smiled. "You've changed." That moment was the climax, not because Elias saved the company, but because he proved, finally, who he had become. He didn't shake. He didn't spiral. He didn't run. He stood inside the storm, still. That night, he sat on the floor with his journal. The final line he wrote, "True strength is not loud. It is calm under fire." He had lost things along the way. Maya was gone, his parents still didn't understand, and the old comforts no longer called to him. But he had gained something far greater, an unshakable mind. There's a truth Elias never learns. And that's what makes this part powerful. Because what the audience knows, is that Elias took the fall for something he didn't do. Remember that spreadsheet error? It wasn't just a mistake. His junior teammate, Lena, had covered it up. Out of fear. She panicked. She knew the numbers were off, but thought she could fix it before anyone noticed. She failed. And when the investigation started, she said nothing. Elias knew something didn't add up. He had trained his team too well. But instead of digging for blame, he led with stillness. He took ownership, not for the error, but for the culture he was building. He absorbed the blow, so no one else had to bleed. What he never sees is this. Weeks later, Lena walks into HR. She confesses everything. She takes full responsibility. Not because anyone pressured her, but because of how Elias handled it. His calm. His courage. His unwillingness to throw someone under the bus, it haunted her. It inspired her. She tells HR the truth, fully. But they don't tell Elias. They let the correction happen quietly. Internally. No glory. No recognition. He never finds out. But we do. We know he was right all along, not just in practice, but in principle. And that's the irony, Elias didn't need the world to see his strength. Because the way he lived, the way he responded, was the reward. The impact he made happened in silence. And sometimes, that's where the most powerful things unfold. People didn't recognize Elias at first. Not because he looked different, but because he felt different. There was something in his posture, grounded. In his eyes, quiet fire. In his voice, no rush. No ego. He didn't need to dominate meetings anymore. He didn't interrupt. He didn't chase credit. But when he spoke, people listened. Because every word had weight. Even Ray, the man who once worried Elias was losing himself, now found himself watching him with quiet respect. "You don't fight the same way anymore," Ray said one evening. "That's because I'm not fighting people," Elias replied. "I'm watching myself." That was the new Elias. Less fire, more clarity. Less ambition, more direction. He was still driven, but now, it came from within. Not from fear. Not from proving anything. And people began to notice. His team trusted him more, not because he was perfect, but because he was consistent. He owned mistakes. He stayed calm under pressure. He gave others room to speak, even when he disagreed. That kind of leadership didn't shout. It echoed. His parents still didn't understand all the changes, the minimalist life, the Stoic quotes on the wall, the floor mattress. But they noticed something. He wasn't tense anymore. He laughed more. He listened more. "You seem lighter," his mother said one afternoon over tea. "I let go of things I can't control," Elias smiled. Turns out, that's most things. As for Maya, they didn't get back together. But one day, months later, she reached out. Just a simple message: I don't know what you did, but I see peace in your eyes now. I'm proud of you. Elias didn't reply right away. He sat with it. Not because he wanted to win her back, but because for the first time in his life, he didn't need anyone else's validation to feel whole. He had become mentally unbreakable, not by building walls, but by opening the door to his own inner life. By doing the work. Habit by habit. Moment by moment. He wasn't trying to be impressive anymore. He was trying to be true. And in that truth, he found a man he could finally respect. It all came full circle on a quiet Sunday morning. Elias was cleaning out his shelves, donating old clothes and books, when he found it, the same dog-eared copy of Meditations he had discovered months ago. He smiled. The cover was more worn now. The corners bent. Dozens of pages were underlined, scribbled with notes. Tiny thoughts in the margins. Insights. Breakthroughs. But what caught his eye was the first journal entry he had ever written. I will become mentally unbreakable, and I will do it with discipline, not desperation. He read it out loud. Softly. Not with pride, but with a kind of awe. Because every decision since that moment, every habit, every failure, every quiet win, had been a response to that promise. He sat on the floor, cross-legged, and pulled out his newest journal. Side by side, the two notebooks looked like bookends. One full of questions. The other, full of answers he had written through living. He flipped to a blank page in the new one and wrote, I am still becoming. But I am no longer afraid. Then, he did something he hadn't planned. He wrapped the old Meditations in brown paper. Tied it with twine. And wrote a note on top, for someone who needs it more than they know. He walked to the station where he first found it, that small, dusty bookstore. He slipped the package back onto the shelf, in the exact spot he'd once pulled it from. No name. No signature. Just a quiet gift to the next Elias. The man or woman still drowning. Still pretending. Still afraid. That was the payoff. Not the promotion. Not the peace. But the proof that transformation isn't loud, it's repetitive. It's in the planning. The daily choices. The habits that seem small, until one day, you look back and realize. They built you. From the inside out. The transformation didn't end with a quote. Elias lived it, every single day. He still rose before dawn. Still brewed his coffee in silence. Still opened his notebook while the city slept. But now, his actions were stitched with presence. He ran 5 kilometers each morning, not to chase fitness, but to train his mind to keep going when his body said stop. He kept his phone on silent for most of the day. Not because he didn't care, but because he'd learned how to protect his focus like it was sacred. At work, Elias led differently now. He no longer rushed to answer every question. He asked more than he spoke. He coached his team through calm, not pressure. Control what you can, he'd tell them. Respond with clarity. Let the rest be noise. And they followed, not because he forced them to, but because they saw a man who practiced what he preached. He turned down a second promotion. Not out of fear, but because it would have pulled him away from the life he was building, not toward it. Instead, he took Fridays off. Spent them writing. Reading. Volunteering with at-risk youth. He taught them the same habits that saved him. The same questions. What kind of person do you want to be? What can you control? How do you choose stillness in chaos? He didn't preach Stoicism. He embodied it. Even Ray noticed. "You're not just doing these things anymore," he said once. "You've become them." That was it. The habits, the journal, the cold showers, the floor sleeping, they weren't hacks. They were anchors. And Elias? He had become the kind of man who didn't need the world to slow down. Because he had trained himself not to speed up. Every movement was deliberate. Every breath, a reminder. He wasn't chasing strength anymore. He was strength. Looking back, it all made sense. Not because the path was straight, it wasn't. It twisted through burnout, heartbreak, fear, and failure. But every habit, every journal entry, every moment Elias chose silence over chaos, wove together like threads in a single, unbreakable rope. There was never one magic moment. No single quote. No perfect morning routine. Just consistency. Tiny acts of courage repeated daily, until they shaped the man. His story wasn't just about learning Stoicism. It was about living it, habit by habit, conflict by conflict. Each chapter of Elias's life, from the panic in his chest to the calm in that glass-walled boardroom, was connected by intention. He didn't lose himself in this process. He finally found himself. And you could trace the whole journey like a map, from the first sentence in that bookstore, to the silence in his journal, to the peace in his stride. There were no flashy victories. No dramatic speeches. Just a quiet truth that never wavered. I will become mentally unbreakable, and I will do it with discipline, not desperation. And that truth? It carried him. Unified him. Made him whole. Every transformation has a cost. And Elias paid his. He lost Maya, not because there wasn't love, but because growth sometimes moves people in different directions. He drifted from friends who didn't understand his silence, who mistook his stillness for withdrawal. He disappointed his parents by stepping off the promotion treadmill. By choosing peace over prestige. He gave up comforts, warm beds, impulsive spending, lazy distractions. But what he gained was priceless. He gained the ability to sit with his thoughts, unafraid. He gained control over his emotions, not by suppressing them, but by understanding them. He gained space in his mind. Clean, quiet space, where he could think clearly, choose wisely, and breathe deeply. And perhaps most of all, he gained himself. Not the version others shaped. Not the role he was cast in. But the raw, real, resilient version that had always been buried under expectation and noise. And here's the beauty of it all. He didn't become superhuman. He still had bad days. He still got tired. He still felt lonely sometimes. But now, when storms came, he didn't panic. He paused. He breathed. He returned to the 7 habits, like a pilot returning to the checklist. And step by step, he brought himself back to stillness. That was the true aftermath. Not perfection. But power, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. And as Elias walked forward, a little older, a little scarred, a little wiser, he knew he'd never go back. Because he had done the work. He had earned the peace. So what does Elias's journey really teach us? It's not that Stoicism is about being cold, or emotionless, or perfect. It's that you don't have to live at the mercy of the world. You can lose things. You can be misunderstood. You can face pressure, chaos, and even heartbreak. And still walk through it all with your mind intact, your spirit whole. The 7 habits didn't give Elias superpowers. They gave him ownership. Ownership over his time. Over his reactions. Over the man he chose to be, even when life didn't cooperate. And that's what Stoicism really is. Not about suppressing emotion, but about mastering it. Not about controlling the world, but about controlling yourself. Because once you learn how to choose your response, no matter what's happening around you, you become mentally unbreakable. Just like Elias did. Not overnight. Not without pain. But with intention. With stillness. With discipline. And now, it's your turn.